Most of the people I know are people that were connected through the school or the Artpolice group. And I'd say first it was Saul, Peter Saul, because he's so productive and so influential. Of the people in the group, I think Ed Rath, Andy, uh, still sort of puzzle me and interest me. But in general, my feeling is that you that influence is good as far as it goes. But I personally am trying to find a way to get to push it away and get to a core of my own interests. Many years ago, Saul said, focus on focus on your own story, and that's what I've been trying to do lately. That's the end of that answer. Yes, I'm a very critical person. I've been critical all my life. I think it affected my life enormously because people are not interested in criticism unless it's positive. Uh, if you have something good to say it. If you don't have something good to say, just shut up, has been sort of the rule of thumb. When I when I was teaching, I felt criticism was the most important thing for the students. When I was writing about artists, I thought criticism was very important, that they get a different point of view. And in general, I'm I think criticism is like the horse and cart. If the artist doesn't have a decent critique, I think they flounder. And I think that the risk of being critical is people don't like you, or they don't agree with you, or they demonize you. And the thing that I least liked about the teachers that I had that I didn't like, which was most of them, is they were acritical. They were just interested in you re-upping in their classes. And the same with people in general. What attracted me to Joe Zucker many years ago was he was very sarcastic and very critical, just like Peter Saul. And I feel like sarcasm, criticism, and commentary is essential to the growth of any artist. And that the fact that they don't want it or they don't like it is irrelevant. And I think it was why I probably didn't last at the school beyond the couple decades I was there, and why I had people just disagree with me is I felt that criticism was a necessary evil. That if you had no idea from outside about what you're doing, it would be, uh, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess to me, they two things go together like A, B, C: the art, the criticism, and and the ultimate kind of posterity. Cut. I don't. I think things are going to be lost. I think the nature of the tumult that's in the society now and in the arts, I think that there's going to be a big shadow over this part of the 21st century, and it will take a while for a posterity to arise because there's so much conflict and contradiction and trouble. And I think on some level, I don't have any expectations about posterity. I do hope that things survive or ideas survive, but I personally think the future is just still unwritten. My my hope is that there will be an emergence of a culture from the ruins of the cultures that are now in place. I think the great expansion of the arts globally, internationally, will contract as the antipathies between the various polarities solidify. And as I've seen in my own life over 50, 60 years, a lot of things will be forgotten. And as Marcel Duchamp said many years ago, that posterity sorts out things about what will persist and what won't. And my feeling right now is that the planet itself is at risk, and that people are, the dawning of people of this change is something that the virus brought to attention, that we are a global community and that the models of socialism and capitalism are not working, and the arts are not an ancillary part of it, but the most important thing humans do is creative work, whether it's in science or technology or art. And it seems like it's a lot's going to be lost and maybe recovered at some point by anthropologists or historians. But it does seem like there's a general breakdown in understanding about history, that people think of history as something that they put aside for today, but it does seem like the future is very unknown and that the planet is at risk in a way it's never been before. And I think that most of us feel like we're leaving behind a real mess as we exit our lives. People of my age, people in their 70s and 80s. Because that I think that the internet and in general the idea that we can go online and speak is great, but that the part of it that's interesting to me is that creation of audience, which is what galleries and museums and institutions of all sort are trying to draw in an audience. And I think on one level it reminds me of the Tower of Babel, where you have everyone talking to everyone in different languages and no center. And I think that on some levels the internet is lacking focus, because it focuses on the most spectacular events, explosions, wars, etc. But it doesn't really focus on any progress of humanness except in special categories. So on one level, I'm happy for it because it's cheaper than going to a printer and printing something. But the way that we gather in an audience is really mysterious to me, because I noticed that when Trump was taken off the platforms, his website failed to attract much attention, and it was thought of as an embarrassment to his people. And I think that's the truth. I think it's a bully pulpit. If someone has something to say, it can be said. But for me, it's, and this is something I got from a friend of mine who was a web designer at the Walker Art Center, is that the JPEG itself may be the most persistent form of historical record that we'll have going into the millennium. So on some level, we are creating a history that's fragmentary, just like the experience of life is fragmentary and accidental. But I do believe that electronic storage is very important in terms of moving into the future. But at this time, it just seems like the most important thing is people finding empathic relationships to each other and to the part of the culture they live in. Because the formation of an audience is something that can take an artist or a writer or a musician or even people in the sciences some time to develop. It doesn't happen overnight. So I'm grateful that the telephone extended and became a global outreach, but it does seem like a Tower of Babel. It does seem like there's no focus, and it does seem like Guy Debord's idea of the spectacle has taken hold, and that if the breaking through with new ideas, I think, is more difficult, because the internet seems to be an extension of the advertising business of everybody poking their heads up saying, oh, I've got something, and very sad. But on another level, perhaps when people begin to realize that making peace is the way that we make progress, there will be a new world order. But I don't see it coming entirely from the technology, but more for human compassion and empathy, and a love for communication, for passing along things that you know to the future. And in the case of art, the idea that art is available to all, that from children to old people, everyone, that it's a way of communicating that mixes images and words and ideas, and that it's kind of like an omelet that you don't like the mushrooms, you pick them aside. There's some sense in which we need a hermeneutics that would investigate what's happened and give us some sense of what we can use and we can't. And it just seems like the conflicts that exist, not just in the arts and sciences, but in the society in general, have manifest a chaos that is replete with no solution. And for me, the solution is people becoming more cognizant of their mortality, that their lifespan is short compared to a geological lifespan or a physiological lifespan of a species. So I'm not optimistic, but I do believe that history will persist in some form, and that art history is not just antecedent to history in general, but that culture is the creation of a society, and in some form it will persist, even if it's just something that's discovered by people or by an unknown culture in the future, distant future. But at the present moment, it seems like chaos is in the driver's seat. Cut.